stealing, woo, wheeling dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Kurt Angle, yeah. Why, Triple H? You son of a why? Tell me why. And Tony Khan, this is also on you.
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it.
Crazy week in the world of professional wrestling, man. Ironic. It's ironic, man. Greed has taken over the wrestling industry, primarily WWE. It's insane. Greed has effectively taken over WWE. It's wild. As you guys all know, WrestleMania 43 in 2027 is set to take place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's absolutely insane. It's crazy to think that WWE has been doing business with Saudi Arabia since 2018. And now, almost 10 years later, Saudi Arabia is going to be getting its first actual WrestleMania. This is not a situation in which they're getting like a WrestleMania that was like the greatest Royal Rumble. If you guys remember, their first Saudi Arabia show was the greatest Royal Rumble. It was a Royal Rumble, but it wasn't actually a Royal Rumble. If you really want to take things into consideration, it was kind of a non-canon Royal Rumble, if you really want to take things into consideration. But WWE, as they always do, TKO, showed their nature, I should say, of greediness. And they not only showed that when they announced WrestleMania for next year to be in New Orleans, and then all of a sudden a couple months later, they scale back and we're like, you know what? We got more money from Las Vegas. Let's just announce WrestleMania in Las Vegas instead. So they actively screwed over. Think about this. They actively screwed over New Orleans for Las Vegas. And now they announced WrestleMania 43 to be in Saudi Arabia. Ironic. Welcome to the WrestleHavoc podcast. It is Sunday, September 14th, 2025. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the podcast. It is episode 20 of the WrestleHavoc podcast. We got a lot of things to talk about on this edition of the show. We're not only going to be talking about WrestleMania 43 taking place in Saudi Arabia, we're also going to be talking about Andrade. Didn't he recently come back last January? Yes, he came back after a lackluster run in AEW. Well, let's be honest, he had a lackluster run once again in WWE. This is his second run in WWE, and he got let go by the company. Shocking news to all. Andrade has been let go from the company, so we're going to be talking about that as well. We're also going to be talking about Paramount. Paramount, of course, set a bet out, and from what it looks like, they are set to possibly buy Warner Brothers Discovery. How does that affect AEW? We're going to be talking about that on this edition of the show. Ticket prices tend to go up, not down. At least if you're WWE, they always tend to go up because, again, these people really want to stretch out all of the money out of your bank account. Well, Mark Shapiro, the COO of TKO, talked about ticket prices, and he blatantly admitted, yeah, we're going to keep raising these prices because WWE is still not at the level of the UFC. We really want the WWE to be at the level of the UFC. We're going to be talking about Mark Shapiro's comments and my thoughts on that whole matter because I have a lot to say on that whole situation. Plus, we're going to be giving you guys my preview and predictions for not only Wrestlepalooza, but also AEW All Out, which is set to take place this coming Saturday. A lot of wrestling is set to take place this Saturday. It's crazy. Lots of wrestling. We got All Out, Wrestlepalooza. Of course, Wrestlepalooza is going to be the very first WWE PLE on the ESPN DTC app. And of course, All Out is going to be the very first AEW pay-per-view on HBO Max. And guess what? There's a $10 difference. Yeah, instead of paying $50 for AEW All Out, you are going to be paying $40. So we're going to be talking about all this and much more right here on this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It is episode 20 of this edition of the WrestleHavoc podcast. Without any further ado, let's get straight into the news. But before we get into all this craziness, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, if you guys are watching on WNN platforms, that being the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel, I thank you guys so much for watching me on those platforms as well. But without any further ado, let's get straight to the wrestling talk. We're going to start with Andrade. Andrade has been in the news this weekend, and not for a good reason. From what it looks like, Andrade has been released, or I should say he has been fired from WWE. The news broke on Saturday, and it was a shocker to a lot of people because it didn't feel like a long time ago that Andrade actually came back from AEW. Because, of course, if you guys don't remember, Andrade was originally with WWE back in the late 2010s, and he had a great run in NXT, but then had a lackluster run once he got called up to the main roster. And then, of course, he got let go by the company because this is during a time where they were doing budget cuts. And then he had only one other option, and that other option was AEW. A lot of people were happy that he joined AEW, but as the years went on, his run was kind of lackluster, and you can put him on the many names of AEW that AEW has fumbled, if you really want to think about it, because Andrade, I mean, the talent of Andrade is just off the charts, and the fact that AEW just didn't utilize him well clearly shows the creative bankruptcy that AEW was dealing with. But of course, he came back to the WWE last year at the Royal Rumble, and his run was kind of lackluster as well. WWE didn't really do anything with Andrade, unfortunately, and it really showed in his booking. Of course, he had the great Best of 7 series with Carmelo Hayes last year, and that was really it. They put the Speed title on him. If anybody watches WWE Speed, if you guys don't know, WWE Speed was a show on X or Twitter at the time. And honestly, if you watch WWE Speed, you are insane because nobody watched WWE Speed. Like, I'm going to say this right here and right now. The people that watch WWE Speed are on the same level of the people that watch NXT Level Up. Like, who watches those shows? Like, seriously, who watches those shows? But Andrade was the Speed champion like anybody cared. They paired him in a tag team with Rey Fenix, and that was actually, that had some potential. But unfortunately, there was really no direction at all when it came to the tag team with Rey Fenix and Andrade. And it sparked a lot of conversation on social media as to where Andrade might go next. A lot of people were talking about how Andrade may come back to AEW. But more information came out regarding as to why he got let go from the company. It was not a situation in which he was kind of fed up with the booking. Well, there were some creative differences with WWE and Andrade, but from what it looks like, this whole situation is more of a disciplinary matter. So I'm reading this from the takedown on Sports Illustrated. On Saturday, it was revealed WWE quietly cut ties with the former U.S. champion Andrade, moving him to the alumni section of the company website. The takedown on SI would soon learn that Andrade's departure was not mutual and that the company released him from his contract. It is not clear as to whether or not he's ever requested his release, but the decision to cut him was on the company's violation and not related to budget moves. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer would reveal on Saturday night that the release was disciplinary, which the takedown on SI can confirm. We can also add more context as to what sort of discipline Andrade was facing. Multiple sources indicate to the takedown that Andrade had at least one wellness policy violation during his most recent WWE run. It is not known how exactly he was in violation of the policy, or whether or not he, in fact, tested positive for a banned substance. WWE can suspend talent for failing to produce the test. It is also not clear if it directly led to his release, but it was noted that he was suspended without pay as a result of it. Initial reports noted that he had not been backstage at SmackDown as of late and was not listed on the internal roster's website. Takedown on Sports Illustrated can add that he was told to leave the taping last month and he was escorted out of the building. A high-level source asserted to the dismissal from the building was in relation to his most recent suspension and that it affected major creative plans for his tag team with Rey Fenix. As of right now, the last time we saw Rey Fenix was on SmackDown, in which we had that great match with Sami Zayn. Continuing on with this report, Bodyslam.net's Corey Hayes reported on Saturday night that WWE had tried to get in touch with Andrade for several weeks, but had been unsuccessful. The takedown on Sports Illustrated can confirm at this time, though the incident on SmackDown was set to have occurred in the middle of August. Then the takedown on Sports Illustrated talks about Andrade's previous wellness violations in his last run in WWE. They stated this, and I quote, "While sources indicated that there were at least one wellness violation policy this year, this would not be the first with the company. WWE announced in January of 2020 that he was suspended for his first violation of the policy, which resulted in a 30-day suspension. He would leave the WWE the following year, jumping ship to AEW, where he would perform until December of 2023. That was the World's End event, because if you guys don't remember, Andrade faced off against Miro at that pay-per-view. That was on the first World's End event in Long Island, December of 2023. And if you guys don't know, Andrade actually left AEW on good terms. Normally when a guy like maybe a Miro or like a guy that got released from WWE that would go to AEW, there's a tendency that, of course, those guys that come from WWE demand a lot from AEW, and normally they would just use AEW as leverage, and essentially they would go back to WWE. Andrade was actually one of those people that didn't like burn that bridge with Tony Khan, and Andrade actually left on mutual terms. Tony Khan actually on that same night at the press conference for World's End 2023 put over Andrade. And he talked about how I would love to work with him in the future, but as of right now, he's leaving AEW. Continuing on, he would return to WWE in 2024 at the Royal Rumble match and last performed at SummerSlam in a six-pack TLC match. Continuing on with his run in AEW, of course, he also faced disciplinary action there because they also mentioned the backstage incident that he had with Sammy Guevara, which I can remember that vividly, simply because of the fact that, of course, this was roughly like this whole thing with Sammy Guevara and Andrade came out when Andrade went on an interview. He went on an interview and he talked about how there's some wrestlers who are soft in AEW, and I believe he mentioned guys like Sammy Guevara. I don't recall if he mentioned him via name, but he did mention about wrestlers being soft in the ring, and he talked about how essentially like, hey, you are, for lack of a better term, if you hit me hard, I can hit you hard back. That's the mentality that I have. If you hit hard back. And Sammy Guevara took offense to that, and he went on a social media tirade to the point where it led to a backstage altercation, and Andrade unfortunately faced disciplinary action. Keep in mind, this was roughly around the time where Brawl Out happened. So where the CM Punk incident happened, the fight backstage after the press conference from Hell took place. So this was like a couple of weeks after. And this is during a time where like the AEW locker room was like a war zone, because every single week you'd hear stories of a backstage fight that would happen. It was absolutely crazy. But continuing on with the report, it should be noted that WWE has not published any potential wellness policy violations publicly since the TKO merger in 2023. As a result, it is unknown how many there have been. If there have been any outside of this at all, WWE has not commented on the nature of the release in a formal capacity as of press time. Okay, let's talk about Andrade, man. This was quite of a shocker to a lot of people. I will say this. This was quite of a shocker to a lot of people, simply put. I mean, again, Andrade was one of the guys that were released from WWE, went to AEW, had a lackluster run in AEW, only to come back to the WWE. What this whole thing screams to me is the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I know a lot of people have been pointing that term loosely on social media regarding Andrade and his release. If these reports are true and Andrade failed the wellness violation, that's on Andrade. It's not on the company. You can talk about how WWE, didn't book this guy well. He wasn't prominently featured in a lot of great matches. They just didn't care about Andrade at all. They just used Andrade. Whatever. At the end of the day, if these reports are true and Andrade had failed a wellness test, then that is on Andrade. If he got released due to disciplinary actions, that is on Andrade. That is on Andrade, unfortunately, because at the end of the day, WWE is a publicly traded company and they have to impress their shareholders. And if you do stuff that embarrasses the company, then they're gonna act on it. They're gonna act on it and give you some sort of punishment. WWE doesn't play at the end of the day. WWE doesn't play. Look, when it comes to Andrade's run as a whole, his second run in WWE, I'm going to be honest, I just didn't really care about a lot of the things that Andrade was doing. From the moment they put the speed title on him, I was like, oh yeah, that's what they're doing with Andrade. They don't really care about Andrade. They're not going to put him in, at least in the mid card. They're going to demote him to the speed show, which is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. But in terms of his release, look, at the end of the day, you can't really blame WWE for this if this is true. Now, where is Andrade going to go now? Is he going to return to AEW? I know a lot of people were speculating, hey, the Continental Classic is coming up in a couple of months. What if Andrade shows up in the Continental Classic? We're going to have to wait and see. But AEW could be an option. A lot of people were pointing TNA. TNA does have that relationship with WWE, though. I don't know if that's going to really take things into consideration when it comes to Andrade. Is Andrade going to return to CMLL? I mean, CMLL is booming in business. I mean, he would love to go to CMLL, but we're gonna have to wait and see, man. There's a lot of different options for Andrade. Me personally, I personally don't know where he's gonna go, but to be fair, it's not like he burned a bridge with AEW. I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna return to AEW. I'm gonna be honest. Because if he got released due to disciplinary actions, don't you think, Tony Khan would be aware of this, considering what he has dealt with Andrade and Sammy Guevara, regardless on whose side you would take? I mean, like, it's a weird scenario. And also, if you look at the AEW roster right now, the entire roster is flat out bloated. It's really bloated right now. So, honestly, we're going to have to wait and see what goes down. But a shocking story, to say the least. A very shocking story regarding Andrade. I'm shocked. I'm just as shocked as y'all are. The fact that he got released is insane. But at the same time, if these reports are true, you can't blame WWE. You have to blame Andrade, unfortunately. Continuing on with our next story right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast, we're actually going to be talking about our main story. Our main story is talking about, of course, WrestleMania 43. Look, you guys all know what I'm all about. You guys all know what my takes are going to be regarding this whole scenario of WrestleMania taking place in Saudi Arabia. But WrestleMania is taking place in Saudi Arabia in 2 years. At the end of the day, this was bound to happen. But it's still kind of a shocker to me that WrestleMania is actually going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they must have paid WWE a boatload of money for WrestleMania. It's insane. But I'm reading this from the takedown on SI. WWE WrestleMania 43. Now, keep in mind, this article that I'm about to read to y'all was, I believe, the day before the press conference took place. Because remember, this wasn't announced at the press conference. This actually was leaked from a news source over in Saudi Arabia, I believe. And it was kind of leaked on the internet that, hey, WrestleMania 43 is going to be taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So keep in mind. But I'm reading this from the takedown. WrestleMania 43 was not originally planned to take place in Saudi Arabia, according to new reports stemming from the breaking news the day before that WWE's grandest show will head to the kingdom in 2027. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer has reported that WrestleMania 44 was the actually intended edition of the Showcase of the Immortals that would be held in Saudi Arabia, and then plans changed. Speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority chairman stepped in to get the event moved forward by 12 months. So think about this. WWE wanted WrestleMania 44 to be in Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia was like, no, 2027. WWE wanted it in 2028. They had commitments for 2027. The reason it had to be 2027, Turkey Al-Ashik, in which we will be talking about throughout the majority when we're talking about this topic on this edition of the podcast. Ari Emanuel is the head of TKO. Nick Khan is the head of WWE. Dana White is the head of the UFC. And Dana White and Nick Khan are the head of TKO Boxing. However, The final boss is Turki Al-Sheikh because he's the guy with all the money in the world at his disposal. Dave Meltzer continued on, so he pushed. Saudi Arabia, I believe, was made a country in 1727, and it's like their independence. It's like our 1776, right? Of course, talks about the foundation of the first Saudi state. Then, in the same way, wanted it on the 300th anniversary, and they're paying the money for it. And they have matches that they want, and they're working really, really hard to get those matches. According to PW Insider, a press release in Arabic was accidentally circulated yesterday earlier than intended. The release was quickly pulled, but this believed to be accurate in announcing the news that WrestleMania 43 will come to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, making it the first WrestleMania to be held outside of North America. With TKO involved in the promotion of this weekend's super fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. They also had the AAA show, the Worlds Collide show, which was main evented by Vikingo versus Dominic Mysterio, in which Dominic Mysterio, of course, won the AAA Mega title. It is rumored that the official announcement, which already happened, regarding Mania in Saudi Arabia was going to be announced. Continuing on, WrestleMania 43 will not be the first major WWE PLE to be held in Saudi Arabia. However, the next year's Royal Rumble is already scheduled to take place over there. Continuing on with another report by the Takedown. The Takedown actually did a summary about what took place at the press conference. So if you guys don't know, the day before the press conference, Triple H made the announcement that, hey, we're going to be changing the game. We're going to be changing the game, and we have an announcement at 3 p.m. And they always say that, like, hey, we're changing the game. But they made the announcement, and of course, if you watch this press conference, and keep in mind there was literally no media there, it was just an announcement that looked like a press conference. If you really want to take things into consideration, this whole announcement was absolutely hilarious. They didn't even, like, from the first moment they went live, from the moment you saw the WrestleMania logo, you knew that WrestleMania 43 was going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. You just knew. You just knew. But Triple H commented on the press conference, and he stated this, and I quote, "Thanks to our partners with the GEA and Riyadh season, we just could not be more excited for this opportunity. This is the opportunity to show the world what I think most people already know, that WWE is a global brand that reaches every corner of the world and excites fans from everywhere. Stars were out for this historic announcement, including Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Charlotte Flair, Liv Morgan, Stephanie Vaquer, Logan Paul, and world champion Seth Rollins. Bianca Belair, some of her comments were kind of thrown around all over the internet and had a lot of mixed reactions. She stated this, and I quote, "It has just been very special to see where the WWE and Saudi Arabia partnership started and to what it's evolved into, and it's been an honor to be a part of that progress and that change. Now having WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia, it just shows that WWE transcends globally, and it continues to make history. As a woman, it is very special to be a part of this." The first ever women's match in Saudi Arabia took place at Crown Jewel in 2019 when Natalya defeated Lacey Evans. Nearly 6 years later, the women of WWE are regularly and prominently featured at every PLE event that takes place in Saudi Arabia. Then Turki Al-Sheikh, who, again, we will be talking about. Turki Al-Sheikh, of course, is really the man behind all of this. I believe he is the man behind Riyadh season. If you guys know about Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia is huge. Like, it is huge. But, of course, as you guys all know, he's not only involved in just wrestling, he's actually involved in other aspects of sports. And he's been making big moves primarily in the combat sports industry. Of course, the new TKO Boxing League, which a lot of people were concerned about. They just had their first event with Canelo versus Crawford yesterday. And a lot of boxing fans are actually very worried about this new boxing league. In reality, it is a promotion in a sense, because if you look at boxing, boxing is not really like, it's not like MMA or pro wrestling where like there's one promotion dominating a whole industry. It is multiple different promotions that are in a way kind of on the same level. So I'm talking about like Top Rank with Bob Arum, Matchroom with Eddie Hearn, Golden Boy with, of course, Oscar De La Hoya. But this new boxing league, even though it's a promotion, they're calling it a league because they essentially want it to be, they want to make it into the UFC of boxing. They kind of want to make it like the UFC of boxing, and they are actively trying to change the Muhammad Ali Act. If you guys don't know what the Muhammad Ali Act, it was an act that was passed years ago that ordered to protect fighters. It protects fighters from the promoters essentially screwing them over. And they're actively trying to change that legislation. And if you guys know, who is Turki Al-Sheikh working with this new boxing league with? He's working this with Dana White. And who is Dana White friends with? He's friends with the President of the United States. So of course, it sparked a lot of conversation amongst a lot of boxing personalities, and a lot of boxers are really afraid about what could happen for boxing. Of course, UFC has that big issue with fighter pay, which is a very big issue over there. And they're afraid that that's possibly going to happen with boxing. So Turki Al-Sheikh is a very, very, very powerful man. And he talks in this press conference, and he stated this, and I quote, "We deeply respect the legacy of WrestleMania and the global prestige it holds amongst wrestling fans around the world. As part of Riyadh season in 2027, our vision is to elevate this iconic event to unprecedented heights and deliver a WrestleMania unlike anything this world has ever seen." Saudi Arabia is already set to host the Royal Rumble for the first time this coming January. Now, ironically, when it comes to WrestleMania and WrestleMania 43, apparently Saudi Arabia is going to pay top dollar for a lot, and I mean a lot of talent, primarily legends. So again, I'm reading this from the takedown on Sports Illustrated. They stated this, and I quote, "The Saudi General Entertainment Authority was reportedly willing to cut a hefty check to land the biggest event in professional wrestling. It's no secret that Saudi Arabia has long coveted WrestleMania, and the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer wrote in his latest newsletter that the financial terms of this deal could exceed $100 million. So this is crazy. So normally when WWE goes to Saudi Arabia, they used to go to Saudi Arabia like twice a year. From what it looks like, that I believe they went to Saudi Arabia once, and that was with Night of Champions a couple of months prior. But in the past, they would go to Saudi Arabia twice a year. So like they'd have Crown Jewel in the fall, or I should say like they'd have a Saudi Arabia event, like whether that was like a Super Showdown or like an Elimination Chamber around the spring season, and then they would come back to Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel. Normally, I believe Saudi Arabia would pay them roughly around $50 to, I believe, $100 million per event. Correct me if I'm wrong when it comes to the numbers over there. And Dave Meltzer is stating that this could exceed $100 million. I'm sorry, but WrestleMania is not worth $100 million. If anything, WrestleMania is probably worth more if we're talking about the amount of money that Saudi Arabia paid WWE to host WrestleMania in 2 years. So a lot of people were pointing out maybe $500 million, $600 million. Some people were even pointing out $1 billion for WrestleMania to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. I wouldn't be surprised if Saudi Arabia paid $1 billion. I mean, I know that sounds very ludicrous to say, but WrestleMania, people need to understand, WrestleMania is not just any type of show. This is the biggest wrestling show of the year. This is essentially the wrestling fans' Super Bowl. This is WWE's Super Bowl. It's their World Series. It's essentially their World Cup as well. And cities bid for shows like WrestleMania. Like, people get mad that, like, you know, WrestleMania is going to this city. Oh, and they didn't go to that city. Look, WWE no longer just chooses a market for WrestleMania. They don't choose a normal market to host WrestleMania. Now what happens, and it's not just WrestleMania, it's a lot of their other big events, primarily their big four or big five events. I still call it Big Four because I believe in the Big Four. I don't really consider Money in the Bank to be a Big Five, but it's still a big event. Cities bid for shows like Royal Rumble. Cities bid for shows like, of course, WrestleMania, like we saw with Saudi Arabia. Cities bid for shows like SummerSlam. Of course, New Jersey bid for SummerSlam this year, and it was a big success. Cities bid for Survivor Series and possibly other PLEs. But now WWE, when it comes to their premium live events, cities bid for these events. And what's crazy is that Saudi Arabia got a WrestleMania before London. Think about that. Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, got a WrestleMania before London. Everybody wanted London. Everybody wanted London to host WrestleMania. Everybody wanted London to host WrestleMania. And the fact that Saudi Arabia got a WrestleMania first is baffling to me. But, again, these cities probably got outbid by Saudi Arabia. Because if you compare the amount of money that some of these countries or cities are willing to pay for a show like WrestleMania to come to their city, imagine the amount of money that Saudi Arabia paid for WrestleMania. Imagine the amount of money that Saudi Arabia possibly paid for WrestleMania. WWE, it's reported that WWE were like shocked about the amount of money that they got offered. And you guys all know that WWE will always go where the money is at. Because again, WWE is a publicly traded company. They have to answer to their shareholders. And of course, it's not just WWE now. It's the UFC. It's this new TKO boxing league. It's TKO as a whole. So it's really not just WWE. It's TKO making these calls. TKO are a bunch of greedy people. But a lot of people, when Endeavor first bought WWE back in 2023, a lot of people warned wrestling fans that this was going to happen. A lot of wrestling fans warned, or a lot of MMA fans, I should say, warned wrestling fans that this was going to happen. Ticket prices are up. They were like, hey guys, be prepared. Ticket prices are going to go up. What happened? Ticket prices went up. You're going to see sponsors all over the place. What happened? You saw sponsors all over the place. It's like a one big fat commercial every single minute when you watch WWE programming. It's insane. It's crazy. Everything that WWE does is for money because, of course, they are a business. That doesn't mean we have to like it. I understand. Look, if you are a business, your number one priority is making money. That is it. But if you do it at the expense of the people, that's where I draw the line. And when it comes to these ticket prices, I have a lot to say about that whole situation as well. Because Mark Shapiro, of course, the COO of TKO, talked about them wanting to continue to raise these ticket prices. But regarding Saudi Arabia 100% outbid a lot of these other cities. So they probably outbid London. They probably outbid other cities that wanted to bid for WrestleMania, because there's no way that these cities were willing to pay the amount of money to WWE the way that Saudi Arabia was going to pay. There's just no way. There was just no way. No way whatsoever. And do not be surprised. And I'm going to say this right here and right now. And I said this on my most recent video. And that video was titled, How WWE Sold Its Soul to Saudi Arabia. Do not be surprised. I'm telling you this right now. Do not be surprised if there's going to be another WrestleMania. So think about this. WWE paid top dollar. WWE paid top dollar for WrestleMania. Or I should say, Saudi Arabia, I should say. Sorry, I got a text message. Saudi Arabia paid top dollar for WWE. Do not be surprised if, of course, we all know WrestleMania 43 is going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Do not be surprised if WrestleMania 44 is going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Do not be surprised if WrestleMania 45 is going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Do not be surprised if WrestleMania 46 is going to be in Saudi Arabia. And do not be surprised if WrestleMania 47 is going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Do not be surprised. Why do I say we're probably going to be getting back-to-back WrestleManias in Saudi Arabia? Well, look at what WWE did with WrestleMania for next year. They originally announced WrestleMania 42 to take place in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the Superdome. They literally announced WrestleMania 42. They had The Rock show up, of all people, on a random episode of SmackDown to announce WrestleMania 42 was set to take place in New Orleans, only for a month or two later to back out of that deal. Why? Because Las Vegas paid them more money. Again, WrestleMania is a show that's being bid for. They pulled out of the deal, and they essentially screwed over New Orleans, and they were like, you know what? You guys can get Money in the Bank. You'll get a WrestleMania eventually. We are going to go back to Vegas. That's what happened. They screwed over New Orleans. New Orleans got outbid by Las Vegas. Do not be surprised when Saudi Arabia outbids all these other cities that want to bid for WrestleMania. You know it's going to happen. You know it's going to happen, unfortunately. It's just bound to happen, unfortunately. The final terms of the deal, continuing on with this report by The Takedown by Sports Illustrated, the final terms of the deal are going to rely heavily on who WWE is able to book for the show. Dave Meltzer added in his report that his sources at the Saudi GEA are saying that negotiations with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who, by the way, a couple of days ago released his newest trailer for the new Smashing Machine movie, which is a movie on Mark Kerr, the former MMA fighter. Dude, it's an amazing trailer. If you guys haven't checked it out, give it a watch. Give it a watch. It's, there's talks about The Rock possibly winning an Oscar for that film. We're gonna have to wait and see, but that's insane. But their negotiations with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, they were advancing, and that the deal for him to wrestle on the show could be finalized in the very near future. There's a belief that Johnson's payday for this one WrestleMania could be the largest for any pro wrestler for the event in history. At this point in time, the most likely opponents for the final boss at WrestleMania 43 are considered to be reigning WWE champion Cody Rhodes or Roman Reigns. So what this is telling me is, number one, since Saudi Arabia is footing the bill, they're going to be making the calls, not WWE. WWE is not going to be making the calls. Turkey Al-Sheikh is going to be making these calls. From what it looks like. And Saudi Arabia is known to make a very ludicrous request. If you guys don't remember, a couple of years ago, I believe it was one of the very first Saudi shows, there was a report that Saudi Arabia asked WWE to bring back Yokozuna. Yokozuna has been dead for years, and they were requesting WWE to bring back Yokozuna. Do not be surprised if you see a lot of retired veterans wrestle at this show. Because if you guys remember, nowadays, the Saudi Arabia shows are just normal PLEs. But the early Saudi Arabia pay-per-views, I'm talking about the ones from like 2018, 2019, 2020. 2020, the world shut down, but like 2021, like the early Saudi Arabia shows, they were not really like pay-per-views. They were more like glorified house shows. And you saw matches like Goldberg versus The Undertaker. You saw Shawn Michaels come out of retirement. Shawn Michaels came out of retirement to team with Triple H to take on Undertaker and Kane. They literally brought out all of the veterans out there because Saudi Arabia was like, we want these people. We want these people. We don't care how old they were. We want these people. And they made offers that they probably couldn't refuse. But do not be surprised if you see probably maybe, I don't know if Goldberg is willing to do this considering all of his comments regarding his last match at Saturday Night's Main Event. I mean, but like, do not be surprised if Goldberg took the payday because Goldberg is notorious for these Saudi Arabia shows. It'd be crazy. It'd be crazy if Goldberg took the payday. But I mean, do not be surprised even if John Cena. I know John Cena is currently on his retirement tour, but they always say never in this business. Steve Austin retired in 2003 and came out of retirement in 2022. 19 years he was retired. 19 years Steve Austin was retired. I don't think Steve Austin is going to come out of retirement. He doesn't seem the type of person to do that type of stuff, but still. If The Rock is being poached by Saudi Arabia to main event WrestleMania, then we already know what the main event is going to be. It's either going to be Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes versus The Rock, or The Rock versus Roman Reigns. That's what it's going to be. So the winner of the Royal Rumble in 2027 is going to be determined by Turkey Al-Sheikh. It's going to be determined by Saudi Arabia. That's what's going to happen. That is exactly what is going to happen. And I'm going to say this right here and right now. Look, this is not geared towards the people of Saudi Arabia because they're probably super happy that they got a WrestleMania. And if you're happy that if you're in Saudi Arabia and you're happy that you're going to be getting a WrestleMania, that good for you. I'm happy for you. I'm strictly talking about WWE and their greed. WWE is actively doing anything and anything. They will literally do anything possible. They will sell out their biggest show of the year for money. That is what we saw. WWE sold out its biggest show of the year. A lot of people on social media were talking about Vince McMahon. They were talking about how Vince McMahon would never do this type of stuff. He would never sell out his biggest show of the year. I beg to differ, because he didn't sell out his greatest creation, that was WrestleMania. He sold out his entire company to Saudi Arabia. I mean, Saudi Arabia, I believe, went to WWE, but at the end of the day, WWE or Vince McMahon agreed to the deal with Saudi Arabia, so he kind of started this whole thing. Yet these people want Vince McMahon back. I sure as hell do not want Vince McMahon back, in my opinion. I mean, it'd be a PR disaster for WWE. Let's just be honest with ourselves. It would be a PR disaster. But would Vince McMahon do these types of things? Would Vince McMahon do the exact same things that TKO are doing right now? Would Vince McMahon outprice its fan base, or his fan base, I should say, when it comes to ticket prices? Well, Mark Shapiro talked about this whole situation recently, and it's very telling about what WWE and TKO view its audience. Speaking at the annual Goldman Sachs technology conference on Wednesday, Shapiro was asked about the ticket prices for both TKO's major properties, that being the WWE and UFC. He was direct in his assessment that WWE ticket prices have not yet reached their full potential. And he stated this, and I quote, "WWE is not where the UFC is yet on the ticket yield." And I didn't even know the terminology ticket yield even existed. "We have our work to do there," he said. He explained the company's new philosophy, which is a departure from the previous approach under Vince McMahon. He continued on and he stated this, and I quote, "We know that we have a lot of room because Vince McMahon was primarily pricing tickets for families and wasn't totally focused on maxing the opportunity there. Now that we've seen what we can do with the UFC, we're replicating that in terms of ticket yield and holding back on advanced sales when it comes to on location on the WWE side, and it's working out really well." Ticket yield is a term used in the travel and entertainment industries that refers to maximizing revenue by selling all available inventory at a strategic mix of prices. Shapiro has been open in the past about TKO's view that there is, quote unquote, a tremendous upside in increasing WWE's ticket prices. The strategy has already been reflected in a high cost of tickets for recent PLEs and TV tapings in major markets. Shapiro also discussed the importance of site fees for both WWE and UFC events, stating that his primary focus is on, we're going to hear it. We're going to hear that terminology. Cash. He wants cash. That's what he wants. He wants cash. He wants cash. He even issued a warning to cities that have had successful events, suggesting that they will have to pay for us to come back, or else we'll take it to another town. He made it clear this applies to all of WWE's brands, including Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. That is what Mark Shapiro said. That is what Mark Shapiro said. His primary focus is on cash. He issued a warning to cities that have successful events, suggesting that they will have to pay for us to come back, or else we'll take it to another town. Yeah. It's not looking too good for London, eh? It's not looking too good for London. You know, I find it ironic, man. Remember 2 years ago where WWE held Money in the Bank at the O2 Arena in London? And they brought out John Cena. Now, keep in mind, John Cena announced his retirement tour at Money in the Bank only a year later. But keep in mind, a year before he announced his retirement tour, he showed up at Money in the Bank, and essentially he asked the fans, "You need to be loud if you want the first WrestleMania to be taking place in London. Come on, come on, come on, people. Cheer, 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 scream. Do you want a WrestleMania in London?" Why do you think that is? Do you want to know the message behind John Cena? Do you want to know the message behind John Cena coming out at Money in the Bank in 2023 in London and essentially tell fans, hey, do you want a WrestleMania in London? Say yes, and we'll give it to you. You want to know what the real message behind that was? The real message behind the scenes was WWE effectively telling the city of London, hey, pay us the money that we request, or pay us a large amount of money that you're willing to pay us to bring you this WrestleMania event to London. That's what happened there. But also, around that same time, AEW had the first All In, but nobody wants to talk about that. But yeah, they brought out John Cena to tell London, without telling London, hey, pay us the amount of money that we want so we can bring WrestleMania to the city. That's what happened. That's what happened. Capitalism at its finest. It is what it is. It's business. But WWE was very, very strategic in doing that. They were very strategic in doing that. And what's crazy is that TKO is not really afraid to show their true colors. I mean, like they flat out screwed over New Orleans like crazy. It was blatantly obvious. And now they sold their soul to Saudi Arabia. It's absolutely insane. And people need to understand. People need to understand. This not only, I mean, you know who are going to suffer the biggest consequences regarding WrestleMania being in Saudi Arabia? A lot of the events that piggyback off of WrestleMania every year. So if you guys don't know, WrestleMania is not just an event. It is an entire weekend. It's like the Super Bowl. Like Super Bowl has multiple different events outside of the Super Bowl. I mean, everybody from all over the world comes to see the Super Bowl, not just football fans. People who don't even watch football watch the Super Bowl. It's kind of similar with WrestleMania, but in a way, it's kind of not, because wrestling is kind of a really small niche, and WWE loves catering to the mainstream. And yes, they do get that mainstream publicity, but a lot of wrestling fans come from all over the world to watch WrestleMania. I don't think a lot of fans are willing to fly to Saudi Arabia. And I'm very curious to see once 2 years have passed, or a year and a half has passed once we head to WrestleMania season in Saudi Arabia. I'm very curious to see those ticket prices for WrestleMania, because let me tell you, they're not going to be cheap. They are not going to be cheap. They're not going to be cheap. They're going to be expensive. The cheapest seat for a WWE event now is around like $270. If you compare that to AEW, the cheapest seat for AEW is roughly around $30 to $40. And what's crazy is that you can get a pretty good view for only like maybe $60 at an AEW event. Now, granted, it's AEW, it's not WWE. I mean, AEW is just not on the level of WWE. It's common sense, but still. I remember going to Full Gear. Back in 2022, and I paid roughly around, I would say maybe almost $240, maybe a little more. I don't recall the exact number, but I paid a little over $200 for a really good seat that was close to the ring. It was not on the floor, but it was in a section that was literally close to the ring for around $200. $200 today for a WWE event only gets you to the cheap seats, like all the way at the top. It's crazy. It's crazy. These ticket prices are not, they are going to continue to go up. They're going to continue to go up. But as I talked about the independent scene, WrestleMania being in Saudi Arabia is going to affect the independent scene greatly. Because again, a lot of these independent promotions, these smaller promotions, always piggyback off of WrestleMania. They always piggyback off of WrestleMania, and it's a smart business move because, again, it gives them notoriety. It's kind of, in a way, a celebration of wrestling. It's not just small independent promotions, it's also conventions. Conventions like WrestleCon. What is going to happen to WrestleCon in 2027? Is there even going to be a WrestleCon in 2027? We're going to have to wait and see. But if you really think about it, we already have kind of, in a way, 2 WrestleManias per year. One is actually called WrestleMania, and the other one is SummerSlam. SummerSlam, as of right now, is kind of, in a way, it's like a level below WrestleMania, but it's essentially their second biggest show of the year. Maybe they can piggyback off of that, off of SummerSlam for 2027. I know a lot of people were talking about AEW and, hey, they should counter program WrestleMania, but let's be honest with ourselves. It'd be a really stupid move if AEW counter programmed WrestleMania. Regardless how big of that AEW event it would be. Regardless how big AEW would be hosting a show in the States. It'd be a great move, but at the same time, it'd be a ludicrous move. Because everybody's going to be watching WrestleMania. WWE is going to get more of the headlines. That's just how it is. They're all about headlines. WWE, they are masters. You need to understand. WWE, they are masters at marketing. Masters at it. Masters at it. Some might even say that they overdo it a little bit. But you know what? Who cares? They are still masters at it. And that's not me kissing their ass. I'm just telling the truth. If you counter program WrestleMania, I'm going to be honest, it'd be a flop. Because it'd be a stupid move because, again, you're at the end of the day, like, dude, you're not going to get more of the headlines. WWE's going to get all of the headlines because it's WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania. That's like saying the XFL is counter-programming the Super Bowl. Like, no, it makes no sense. Nobody's going to watch your XFL game. Everybody's going to watch the Super Bowl. And they're going to watch the Super Bowl not for the game itself. They're going to watch the Super Bowl for the halftime show. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. Those are my thoughts regarding the ticket prices and Saudi Arabia being at WrestleMania. Look, at the end of the day, WWE sold its soul to Saudi Arabia. I'm not a fan of this move, but at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, I mean, what else did we expect? What else did you expect? We expected WWE to make a move like this. We expected WWE to make a move like this. So, again, why are we complaining now? Why are we complaining now? We already knew that this was going to happen. WWE has been in bed for Saudi Arabia for almost 10 years at this point. Almost 10 years. By 2028, it's going to be 10 years. So, again, why is everybody so shocked? WrestleMania taking place in Saudi Arabia, they're going to go with the money, or they're going to go where the money's at. They are going to go where the money's at, and they're not afraid to admit it. They're not afraid to admit it. All right, before we continue on with the WrestleHavoc podcast, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, if you guys are watching the WrestleHavoc podcast on WNN platforms, whether that is the WNN Facebook page or WNN YouTube channel, I thank you guys so much for watching me on those platforms as well. It is episode 20 of the WrestleHavoc podcast. It is Sunday, September 14th, 2025. Let's talk about AEW, man. AEW has been in the news, and there's been a lot of doom and gloomers on the internet regarding AEW. And, of course, as you guys all know, Paramount has been making a lot of moves lately. And according to the Wall Street Journal, Paramount Skydance is getting ready to make an offer to buy possibly Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, once again, I'm reading this from The Takedown. The Takedown on Sports Illustrated has essentially recapped this whole scenario, or this whole story. Warner Brothers Discovery is the parent company of products such as DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Studios, and HBO Max, which is the home of All Elite Wrestling. Earlier today, it was reported that Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav believes that the price of HBO Max is quote-unquote underpriced. You know what that means? The prices for those streaming services are going to go up. He also revealed that he plans to crack down on password sharing before the end of the year, while price hikes for HBO Max will come in the future. Man, password sharing, dude. What have we become as a society, bro? That is insane. This is far from the only news on the topic today, as the Wall Street Journal reported that Paramount Skydance is preparing to make a majority cash bid to purchase Warner Brothers Discovery. The bid encompasses the entire company, including cable networks, movie studios, and streaming services like HBO Max. the streaming platform that hosts AEW content. Paramount Skydance itself just finalized its merger between Paramount Global and Skydance Media mere weeks ago. Could wrestling fans possibly see AEW content moved over to Paramount Plus or a new streaming service combining Paramount Plus and HBO Max? Since the offer hasn't been finalized yet, nothing has changed. There isn't a word on what could this mean for products like AEW that stream their weekly episodes of Dynamite on Collision on HBO Max. With AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery being locked into a multi-year deal that just recently started, one would imagine that would be picked up alongside any purchase by Paramount Skydance. Paramount Skydance streaming service Paramount Plus is the home for libraries from CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, and more. The service has 79 million paid memberships, falling short of HBO Max's 125.5 million paid users. That said, it might make sense for Paramount Skydance to potentially adopt HBO Max as their primary streaming platform. That makes total sense from a business standpoint, considering HBO Max is the larger platform, keeping AEW where it is and not having to force fans from one service to another. Also, we need to take into consideration that HBO Max now hosts the AEW pay-per-views. Okay, what are my thoughts on this whole scenario? This is a very interesting story that I feel like a lot of wrestling fans need to keep an eye out of. They need to keep an eye on this story because this could eventually, affect the future of AEW in a good way or a positive way. I see a lot of doom and gloomers on the internet. There's always doom and gloomers on the internet. A lot of fans always are like, oh my God, this is going to be like AOL Time Warner where it killed off WCW. Look, WCW number one was owned by Time Warner. It was owned. It was a property under the Time Warner umbrella. And keep in mind, this was a company that lost $60 million in the year of 2000. And they're like, think about this. In 1997, which was probably like 1997 and 1996 to 1997 were their peak years. Not even 1997. 1996 to 1998 were their peak years. Those 3 years, they were super profitable. They were super profitable, man. Imagine you're a company that is like making well over $100 million per year, and then you get sold off to the WWF in 2001 for roughly over $2 million. Talk about a downgrade. Talk about a downgrade. WCW in the last 2 years, the last 2 full years of that company's existence was a money-losing machine for Time Warner at the end of the day. It was. But in terms of AEW is not owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, some may say that WBD has a small percentage of AEW, that being like a 1% ownership of AEW, like a minority share of AEW. But I don't know if that is true or not. They haven't really disclosed that at all. And what's ironic is that I feel like AEW is very secretive regarding that whole situation. I don't know why. It's very questionable. But they have a deal with Warner Brothers Discovery to distribute their content. Not they don't own them. But this could very well affect AEW in the good in good terms or on bad terms. It could affect them on good terms because it opens the door for AEW to possibly ink a deal with Paramount to not only maybe extend the partnership with TNT, TBS, HBO Max, but maybe if Paramount eventually buys out Warner Brothers Discovery, maybe to host AEW on a network maybe like CBS. But there's only one problem with that. And that will lead to my bad scenario. Who has Paramount recently gone into bed with? They've gone into bed recently with the UFC. And who owns the UFC? Oh, yeah, that's right. Endeavor owns the UFC. And what organization also does Endeavor own under the TKO umbrella? Oh, yeah, that's right. They own WWE. Do you honestly believe TKO would be okay with another entity that's not theirs to be hosted, primarily a competitor to be hosted on the same platform that the UFC is under? I don't think so. Now, we've seen cases like that before on the MMA side. I mean, PFL is on ESPN Plus, and UFC is on ESPN Plus as well. But, I mean, let's be honest. UFC gets more of the attention because, of course, the UFC is the UFC. But do you honestly believe that TKO would be happy if AEW... And now keep in mind, this extension that they signed with WBD it just recently started in the beginning of this year. But that deal is, I believe, only a 3-year deal. So the deal ends, I believe, by the end of 2027. So honestly, I mean, we do not know what the future would hold for AEW if that was the case. But I will say one thing regarding TKO, and this is actually, I don't want to say a compliment on their end, but you can't do nothing but put over these people in terms of their connections that they have, in terms of their competitive tactics. This is a smart competitive tactic. If you look at the WWE and UFC and regarding their media rights, that is the real battle that is taking place behind the scenes. Everybody talks about talent signing in one place, talent going to another place. And yes, that is a competitive tactic. And trust me, AEW existing is better for the wrestling business because more people get paid more money. Something that TKO hates. Why do they hate AEW being around? They hate AEW being around because AEW is paying talent money. And it forces WWE to step up to the plate and pay their talent even more money, even though they don't believe that they're worth the price that they're being paid. That's why. But the real battle is taking place behind the scenes in terms of their media rights. That's really the real battle that's taking place. If you look at the WWE end of things, they have a deal with Netflix, which is a 10-year deal, but Netflix has the option to opt out of 5. They have a deal with NBC Universal, which is hosting SmackDown, but also, I believe, the NXT PLEs and Saturday Night's Main Event. They have technically a deal with Fox with the Evolve show, but that's on Tubi, which is primarily owned by Fox. They have a deal with the CW that hosts NXT, and CW is currently in talks with TNA for a potential television deal. And TNA is in a partnership with WWE, but do not be surprised if WWE purchases the assets of TNA in the future. Look at what they did with AAA. They purchased AAA, and they're running AAA shows on YouTube. The UFC has a $7 billion deal with Paramount. A $7 billion deal with Paramount. And they're going to be hosting shows on Paramount Plus, and their pay-per-views are going to be free, essentially. So, what am I talking about here? What am I saying? What I'm saying is that what TKO is doing, and this not just only goes for AEW, it goes for any non-TKO entity, whether that is pro wrestling or MMA. Hell, I'll even go and talk about boxing as well, because Top Rank does not have a TV deal anymore. ESPN did not renew them. And who's ESPN in bed with now? Oh, yeah, that's right. They're in bed with WWE. And who does WWE own? Oh, yeah, TKO. What is TKO doing? They are essentially expanding their media properties across multiple different platforms. And it's a smart business move. It is a smart business move. They're split. They are spreading their media rights across all of these different platforms. ESPN, NBCU, Netflix, CW, Paramount, with WWE and UFC. That's going to really hurt AEW when it comes to the negotiation table, because it limits the amount of platforms that they are able to talk to for a new media rights deal. And we all know AEW's bread and butter is their media rights deal. This is not me saying AEW is going to go under or anything. I'm just saying it's going to be very hard for AEW. I mean, there's other platforms out there. There's Amazon Prime. There's Apple TV. I mean, heck, they could even do a deal with Fox, even though, you know, WWE has Evolve. But I mean, it's freaking Evolve. It's a nothing show, with all due respect. But still, it limits AEW's options. But if Paramount buys Warner Brothers Discovery, it is a real possibility that, you never know, Paramount or WBD may not renew them. We're going to have to wait and see. I'm not making assumptions or anything, because again, we're still very early on in the deal, and for all we know, AEW may be in a different place in 3 years, or in 2 years, I should say. So we're going to have to wait and see what goes down, but it's a very interesting story to really keep an eye out on. A really interesting story to keep an eye out on. Moving on to our final topic right here on the WrestleHavoc podcast, we're going to be talking about WrestlePalooza and All Out. As you guys all know, we got 2 wrestling shows happening on Saturday, September 20th. We got the first AEW pay-per-view taking place on HBO Max with AEW All Out, in which you have to pay, oh, you want to hear it? $40 for that pay-per-view. And we got the very first WWE PLE on the new ESPN direct-to-consumer streaming service, in which you got to pay $30 a month for that streaming service. But if you have cable, you can just put all your cable information and you don't have to pay the $30. But we got WrestlePalooza and we got AEW All Out. Originally, both of these shows were actually going to go on head-to-head. But from what it looks like, and it was actually announced last week, AEW All Out has moved their start time from 8 p.m. to 3 p.m. And honestly, it was a smart move on AEW's end. But we're going to be doing a quick card rundown for both shows. First, we're going to be starting out with AEW. AEW All Out, of course, is set to take place at the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And we got a lot of great matches, man. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen on this show. But we got a returning Eddie Kingston. Yes, a returning Eddie Kingston to take on Big Bill. They announced this on Collision. We got Ricochet and Toa Leona and Bishop Khan taking on the Hurt Syndicate, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and MVP. John Moxley is going to take on Darby Allin in a coffin match, which is probably not going to be the end of their feud. MJF takes on Mark Briscoe in a thumbtacks and tables match. Man, the violence is going to ramp up like crazy. Adam Copeland and Christian Cage will take on Dax Hard and Cash Wheeler of FTR. Brody King and Bandito will take on 3 teams in a 4-way ladder match for the AEW World Tag Team titles. Kazuchika Okada will be taking on Konosuke Takeshita versus an unannounced opponent in a 3-way match for the Unified Championship. Mercedes Moné will take on Riho for the TBS Championship. There's going to be a 4-way for the AEW Women's World title. And this match I'm definitely looking forward to. Toni Storm versus Chris Statlander versus Jamie Hayter versus Tekla in a 4-way for the AEW Women's title. And in the main event, Hangman Page will take on TNT champion Kyle Fletcher for the AEW World title. Originally, in the reports, this match was originally set to be, and they didn't even announce it or even build to it, but originally this match was going to be Hangman Page versus Wardlow, which honestly I don't know why that was going to be the case. But as you guys all know, Wardlow, unfortunately, has been injured. And it sucks for Wardlow because the timing for Wardlow has just been absolutely terrible. But we got Hangman Page versus Kyle Fletcher for the AEW World Championship. Moving on to WrestlePalooza. WrestlePalooza is going to be a huge show, and ESPN is promoting the hell out of WrestlePalooza. We got the Usos reuniting to take on Bronson Reed Braun Breaker of the Vision. CM Punk will team with his wife, the returning AJ Lee, take on Seth Rollins and his wife, Becky Lynch, which is going to be a great freaking match. I cannot wait. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Look, everybody's going to watch John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, but everybody's going to watch WrestlePalooza for one reason and one reason only. That reason is the returning AJ Lee. Io Sky will take on Stephanie Vaquer for the Women's World title. Cody Rhodes will be taking on Drew McIntyre. John Cena will face off against Brock Lesnar in the main event. So that is WrestlePalooza for you guys. What are my thoughts on both of these shows? I'm very excited for these shows, but let's not ignore the fact that WWE decided to counter-program AEW. Like, literally, the show wasn't even a thing like a month ago. And now WWE is counter-programming them. But who cares? We still got both shows, and I feel like both shows are going to be great. All Out is going to be fantastic, but I feel like definitely all eyes are going to be on WrestlePalooza. All right. That has been it for the WrestleHavoc podcast from Sunday, September 14th, 2025. Thank you guys so much for watching me on this show. We definitely talked about a lot of topics right here on the podcast. Of course, please make sure to watch the WrestleHavoc podcast every Sunday, not only on the WrestleHavoc channel, but also on the WNN platforms, that being the WNN Facebook page and WNN YouTube channel. And as always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. Look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel, which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the Fergan referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. As always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Rick, Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all later. Peace. The UFC.